everybody. Today we're at the Richmond Olympic Oval, which you can see behind me right here. The Richmond Olympic Oval is an indoor multi-sport arena in the Canadian city of Richmond. It originally opened in 2008 on the banks of the Fraser River. It was built for the 2010 Winter Olympics, which was configured with a speed skating rink. The venue has since been reconfigured as a community multi-sport facility, and that includes a hockey rink, climbing wall, running track, basketball and soccer fields, indoor and outdoor, and table tennis. What are some of the features in Middle Arm Waterfront that help with accessibility?
So in Richmond, there are a few places that encourage inclusive play, and that is a fun thing to watch, especially with the design. The first one I think that was built was the Middle Arm Waterfront, and they have some features that really encourage the people with every disabilities or people with different age group to join together to play. So sometimes when we think about inclusive play, it's only for children, but that is not the case. It's also for the family members, such as the parents or the grandparents with the disabilities, and they can actually be on site with the child and then to supervise and also play along together. So I think that is, like the essence of all that, inclusive play for everybody. So other than the Middle Arm Waterfront one, that's also the accessible playground at the King George Park, and I know that is a new one coming up. I think they are considering also converting the Stevenston Community Center's park to an accessible, inclusive playground as well. So that is fun to do that.
Can you give us specific examples of accessible spots that are located in those two locations, King George or Middle Arm?
Yeah, that is. I think number one is the design of that, right? Whether it is for people with diverse ability and with different mobility aids and things like that. So sometimes, I remember the design at the Middle Arm Waterfront is actually they do have a platform that's shaped like a sheep, and the people in wheelchair can wheel out too, and then also can watch the children playing there. Not exactly physically joining in, but that is also a good start with that. And I know that at this King George Park, actually the design is pretty good. They have a very soft ground, and then they have the pathway that people in wheelchair can travel, and then the people with different mobility challenges or other disabilities can also join in all the different playground equipment as well. So that is the essence of inclusive play.
So overall, would you say that Richmond is or has been accessible?
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course the physical environment, but also other than that, I want to emphasize inclusiveness is more than just the physical environment or the built environment. It is also the people there. The people around, whether they do have the mindset of including everyone, and I do believe that in Richmond we experience that.
Now we are at Stevenston. Stevenston was founded in the 1880s. The village is a historic port and a salmon canning center at the mouth of the south arm of the Fraser River. Today, the early 1900s style architecture attracts both the film and tourism industries. On Canada Day, the community hosts a salmon festival which had been held annually since 1946. This event includes a parade and a huge barbecued salmon sale beside the Stevenston Community Center. In fact, RCD has been involved in the parade for more than 10 years now. most common activities that people like to do in Stevenston include visiting the Gulf of Georgia Cannery Museum, buying seafood at the Fisher's Market, enjoying local seafood restaurants, and taking a walk at Gary Point Park, and much more. What are some of the features in Stevenston that help with accessibility?
Well, it's not just Stevenston, I'd say the entire city. And I think the most accessible thing I find is APS, which is Audible Pedestrian Signal. And that is the thing that you hear when you cross like streets. You know how you hear like the bird chirping sound? And that's what it is, and it helps. It differentiates like which side it is to cross, so then there's one sound for east-west and then the other one for north-south, and it changes like accordingly to the lights.
Right. And do you consider it reliable? Can you depend on it?
I think it's pretty reliable when it's on. Sometimes the volume is a bit low and there's like a lot of cars going by and you can't really hear it as well. But then at the same time, if that's the case, the cars are like enough to tell me if it's my turn to cross. So yeah, I call it pretty reliable.
Now, for our last stop is the Minaroo Center for Active Living. This is a new recreational center that was opened to the public earlier this year. It's a combination of the old swimming pool and the old senior center. Beside the new Minaroo swimming pool is the Minaroo track. Events such as high school track and field, soccer games, and many more events are held here as well. Across from the track is the Richmond Public Library. Do you think Richmond is accessible?
I think Richmond has a lot of strong accessibility points. I've lived all over the Lower Mainland, and when I moved here 10 years ago, of course, one of the first things I noticed is that the mileage on my chair per charge was much longer, just because there aren't hills like in Burnaby and New Westminster. So, obviously the flat nature of Richmond really adds to it being able to be very accessible. I live in central Richmond, so I do everything, wheeling up and down number 3 road in particular, and that's one of the things I love the most, is that, a grocery store, a pharmacy, even if you want a walk-in clinic, all of that you can just get very easily. And most of them are, pretty accessible, obviously, or I wouldn't have been there. And so it's one of the things that I like the most. And currently I'm a Handy-Dart user, but I have used the accessible public transit in the past. And there were a lot of things, again, being in central Richmond, where you could access either public transit or access to Handy-Dart. Gives you lots of easy access to the different amenities that the city has to offer. That might be, for example, the movie theaters, or it might be, again, I'm in central Richmond, we've got lots of malls to pick from, and you're right along SkyTrain as well. So,
what are some of your favorite accessible locations in Richmond?
Okay, well, near my home, I have a few places I like to go. I love to sit under a tree with a good book. And so for me at the moment, my favorite place to do that is a little park that's very close to my place called Brighouse Park. It's handy for a couple of reasons, because I usually like to pick myself up lunch from McDonald's across the way as well. But I like to, there's lots of trees in the area. It's popular. It's actually technically got a baseball park in it, but lots of people are using it for the open grass area and the trees. And then of course directly across from that we have Minaroo Park, which is a little bit more famous for things such as the chapel. There's a chapel there, a historical chapel that you can see you only from the outside, but they even have like a ramp so that you can look in through the window. And I believe it's one of the oldest churches in Richmond. People rent it for weddings and so on nowadays. But there's just lots of beautiful greenery in there. You can walk around on the trails, which are navigable, in a wheelchair. And then of course, if you're living in Richmond, everybody, loves to go down to Stevenston and walk along the river there, or in the parks. And Stevenston has a bit of its own unique flavor. So there's just lots to go and do and see here in Richmond.
So the first question is, from your day-to-day experience, how has accessibility been in the environment around you?
I think in general, particularly cities like Richmond, there are not a lot of hills, and they're really quite accessible. Curb cuts are fairly good, and crosswalks. I love the audible crosswalks. I love that they give me enough time to cross the street, and things like that make a big difference in getting around the city.
Great. So what are some of the features in the area that you stay in, or in Richmond, that help you with accessibility?
There are several. I drive a van with a side lift to it, and in recent years we've got parking spots that are wide enough for me to put my lift down on the side and for me to get off. Particularly, we work at Lansdowne Mall, and there actually are van accessible parking spots to park in, and that just makes my life so much easier. That makes a difference. The crosswalks and giving you enough time to get across the street. Some of the crosswalks that I've come across, the curb cuts that I've come across where I live, they're a little bit steep, and there's no flat part for them to get up on, so it's a challenge for me to go up the ramp and then have to go on a curb this way, curb that way, and there's no actual flat part to go on, and that things like that make it a little bit more challenging than it could be. But other than that, it's a love that there are curb cuts.
Great. And the last question is, from your experience, which accessibility feature helps you the most?
Curb cuts that work are amazing. They're amazing, and the parking. I have to admit, I've been driving my van with the side lift for a number of years now, and for a number of years it was extremely frustrating to park my van, get out, or even get ready to get out and go to push the button and somebody's parked too close beside me. So having the fact that there's enough room for my lift to go down and for me to get out, and it just makes such a difference to independence and being able to do the errands and going to and from work.